In the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Egyptian desert, 50,000 Persian soldiers vanished without a trace. No bones, no weapons, no whispers of their fate. Just an endless sea of sand and an enduring silence. What happened to Cambyses II's mighty army? Join us as we unravel one of history's most perplexing mysteries. Long before the sands of Egypt swallowed an entire army, the Persian Empire stood as an indomitable force, reshaping the ancient world with its might and vision. In the mid-6th century BCE, Cyrus the Great forged the Achaemenid Empire, uniting disparate lands from the Indus Valley to the Aegean Sea. His conquests were not merely territorial, but ideological, introducing a model of governance that respected the customs and religions of subjugated peoples, fostering loyalty and stability. The Persian military was a reflection of this diversity and innovation. Comprising archers, cavalry, and infantry from across the empire, it was a mosaic of cultures united under a single banner. Their strategies emphasized mobility, coordination, and adaptability, allowing them to triumph over formidable foes like the Lydians and Babylonians. Upon Cyrus's death, his son Cambyses II inherited not just a vast empire, but also his father's unyielding ambition. Recognizing Egypt as both a jewel and a threat, Cambyses meticulously planned its conquest. By 525 BCE, he would lead a well-prepared campaign, navigating the challenges of desert warfare and local resistance. Yet, the conquest of Egypt was not the culmination of Persian ambitions. Cambyses, driven by a desire to further expand his dominion, set his sights on the distant lands of Nubia and the enigmatic Siwa oasis. It was during this pursuit that he dispatched a contingent of 50,000 men into the desert, a force that would soon vanish without a trace, giving rise to one of history's most enduring mysteries. Cambyses II was more than a conqueror. He was a man defined by legacy and ambition. Born to Queen Cassandane and Cyrus the Great, he grew up in the shadow of an empire reaching from the Aegean's blue waters to the Indus's flowing currents. Though little is recorded of his private life, ancient whispers tell of a quiet palace where Cassandane's gentle counsel clashed with the harsh demands of court politics. Cambyses is thought to have married his sister, Atossa, forging bloodlines that bound him ever closer to the throne. Our sources hint at least one son, Sipeses, raised in the splendor of Persepolis, destined to inherit a world of gold and turmoil alike. When Cyrus died, Cambyses inherited more than borders. He inherited expectation. His father's open-handed tolerance had knit together a patchwork of peoples, but some viewed Persia's rule as a gilded cage. Egypt, the jewel of the Nile, had refused to bow to Cyrus. To Cambyses, subjugating Egypt was not mere glory. It was proof that Persia's mandate from the gods was absolute. He summoned an army unlike any before. From Media's cavalry lancers to Babylon's shield-bearing infantry, from Armenians famed for their archery to the tribal Lightfoot of the eastern frontiers, 50,000 men answered the call. Seasoned generals like Prexaspes drilled them through dusty fields outside Susa, teaching them to tighten ranks and coordinate spear and bow. Engineers carved siege ramps, and supply officers stocked caravans with dried figs, salted fish, and the precious water skins that would sustain them across barren lands. Their march westward was fraught. First, the fortress city of Gaza fell after a week-long siege, its walls battered by battering rams, and its defenders overawed by Persian archers raining death from above. At Pelusium, Cambyses employed a cunning ruse, painting shields with sacred ibis plumage, so Egyptian priests dared not fight against a symbol of their god Thoth. As each city surrendered, his confidence grew, but so did the desert's challenge. The road to Egypt led first through the fortress city of Gaza, an impenetrable gateway between the Levant and the Nile. In the spring of 525 BCE, Cambyses II arrived on Gaza's battered walls with 50,000 veterans at his back and the promise of Persian steel in his heart. Before the horns sounded the assault, Cambyses secured his lifeline. He forged a treaty with the desert Arabs, guaranteeing his armies water as they swept across the Sinai sands. With their support, his engineers set to work. Siege towers rose like iron behemoths, battering rams groaned against wooden sally ports, and sappers dug beneath Gaza's ramparts, seeking a hidden breach. For 7 relentless days, the walls trembled. By dawn, Persian archers rained arrows upon the defenders. By dusk, the trumpets blared as cavalry circled the city's rear. Gaza's garrison, trained for desert skirmishes but untested against Achaemenid might, launched desperate sorties, only to be cut down by disciplined infantry in tight phalanx. On the 6th night, Cambyses unleashed his masterstroke. Persian engineers dammed the city's wells, leaving defenders parched. Starvation and thirst eroded Gaza's will far faster than any sword. At sunrise on the 7th day, the city gates groaned open. Rather than destroy this prized checkpoint, Cambyses offered clemency. Gaza surrendered under honorable terms and became the logistical hub for his Egyptian campaign. With Gaza secured, the pathway to Pelusium lay open, and the destiny of pharaohs trembled beneath the banners of Persia. After Gaza's swift capitulation, Cambyses II pressed forward to Pelusium, Egypt's eastern bulwark and gateway to the Nile Delta. Here, on the flat plains near 31 degrees 2 minutes north, 32 degrees 32 minutes east, the fate of Pharaoh Psamtik III would be decided. Pelusium bristled with mercenary guards, Arab Lightfoot, Greek hoplites, and Carian bowmen, fortified behind earthworks and canals. Yet Cambyses faced not only walls, but a people whose greatest allegiance was to their gods. Drawing on intelligence from Egyptian defectors, Cambyses conceived a masterstroke of psychological warfare. He ordered his soldiers shields and standards to bear the sacred images of Bastet, the cat-headed goddess revered across Egypt, and even her favored companion, the ibis. As Persian ranks closed, they drove live cats and sacred birds before them, holding them aloft on spears and lances. To the Egyptian defenders, harming a cat, or even seeing one fall, would invoke divine wrath. Terrified that any misstep might desecrate their deities, they refused to unleash volleys of arrows or mount a countercharge. Communication broke down, discipline faltered, and Pelusium's garrison melted away under the weight of Cambyses' cunningness. Within hours, the walls stood empty. Pelusium surrendered unconditionally, opening the Delta's gates to Persia. Through brilliance rather than brute force, Cambyses had turned Egypt's piety into its undoing, and taken the first step towards supplanting the pharaohs themselves. With Pelusium's walls surrendered, and the Delta's floodgates thrown open, Cambyses II wasted no time consolidating his grip on Egypt. He garrisoned the city with elite Persian cohorts and installed a satrap to oversee the rich grain lands that fed empires beyond the Nile. Word of the city's fall reached Pharaoh Psamtik III in nearby Memphis. Though he rallied what remained of his forces, Greek mercenaries, Libyan infantry, and hastily raised levies, the shock of Pelusium's loss had shattered Egyptian morale. Within weeks, Memphis itself lay under siege, starved of supplies and seeing no hope of relief. Psamtik III capitulated to Cambyses' demands. Cambyses treated his captive king with a chilling mix of mercy and intimidation. Psamtik III was paraded in chains to the Persian capital at Susa, forced to witness the fates of Egypt's nobles. 2,000 leading citizens executed for the murder of a Persian envoy, their sons killed, their daughters enslaved, proof that resistance would be met with ruthless retribution. Ancient sources tell of Psamtik's final days in exile. Initially spared, he grew despondent, and according to Greek historian Herodotus, Psamtik attempted to foment rebellion among his fellow captives. When Cambyses learned of the plot, he stripped Psamtik of all dignity. The deposed pharaoh took his own life, some say by drinking bull's blood, sealing the end of Egypt's 26th dynasty and the beginning of nearly 2 centuries under Achaemenid rule. Thus, in the aftermath of Pelusium, a proud civilization bowed before Persian power. Yet the memory of Psamtik III lived on in whispers, of a king who fought to the last, and of an empire tempered by both steel and spectacle. Long before Cambyses II fixed his gaze on Siwa's sacred springs, kings and heroes had journeyed across deserts and seas to seek the oracle's divine counsel. Centuries earlier, the demigod Hercules, son of Zeus, trudged into Siwa on a quest to cleanse his soul of past sins. Local legend tells that he offered the first libations at the temple of Amun, earning the god's favor and marking the oasis as a crossroads between mortal and divine. In the age of myth, Perseus, slayer of Medusa, approached the oracle seeking guidance on where to settle and found instead a promise of protection. The shifting sands would guard the righteous, and the oasis would prosper as a refuge to those deemed just. By the dawn of pharaohs, Egyptian kings paid homage at Siwa. Pharaohs of the Old Kingdom came to affirm their divine right, drinking from the spring that was said to mirror the will of Amun himself. Scrolls record emissaries from Hittite and Nubian courts who knelt before the god's shrine, eager to secure alliances sealed by sacred pronouncement. 2 centuries before Cambyses, the great conqueror Alexander of Macedon made his own pilgrimage. Riding swift mounts across the desert, he arrived under starlit skies to have Amun bless him as son of the divine. The oracle's words, "Go forth and unite the world," fueled Alexander's vision of empire, echoing across continents. Yet none before Cambyses had brought such force to Siwa's door. With Egypt now under his heel, he saw in the oracle not a guide, but a rallying point for descent. To him, Siwa's defiance threatened Persian dominion. He assembled a strike force of elite cavalry and seasoned infantry, just 1,000 men, hand-picked for endurance and loyalty. They carried only what they could bear, skins of water, iron spearheads, and scrolls sealed by royal decree. By lantern light, they slipped away from the Nile's lush embrace and into the shifting dunes. Guides versed in desert lore led them by constellations and hidden watering places. Each night, they camped beneath palimpsests of stars, listening to the wind that carried whispers of past pilgrims. Cambyses marched towards Siwa, not as a suppliant, but as a conqueror seeking to silence a legacy older than any throne. The desert would decide their fate, and the oracle would judge whether Persia's rule or Amun's will would endure. For days, the company pressed deeper into the desert, each step a rebellion against thirst and despair. By noon, the sun scorched their shields. By night, the cold crept into their bones. Yet not one man faltered, for behind every hardened eye burned the king's will. On the 7th dawn, Siwa's date palms shimmered like emerald sentinels on the horizon. The air grew cooler, carrying the promise of water and the weight of centuries-old faith. Cambyses halted his troops at the edge of the oasis's turquoise pool, its surface broken only by the reflection of the temple's sandstone columns. As Persian soldiers formed ranks before the high priest and his saffron-robed acolytes, the king proclaimed that he sought the oracle's verdict, whether Amun blessed Persia's rule or harbored rebellion against it. In the hush that followed, only the wind replied, until the priest, voice steady as the dunes, warned that the desert bowed to no man's will, and that overreach would turn the sands into Persia's tomb. Unmoved, Cambyses delivered his ultimatum: 3 days to receive an answer beyond riddles, or Persia's own law would supplant Amun's counsel. Engineers mapped every palm's well. Scouts sketched the temple's walls. Every dawn brought fresh tension, every dusk, fresh resolve. On the third morning, beneath the sun's full glare, the priest presented a sealed scroll, declaring that Persia's strength was a gift from the gods, only so long as Persia honored cosmic balance, and that breach of that balance would doom the invaders to the desert's mercy. Cambyses broke the seal, read the warning, and, grinning with unshaken authority, announced that Persia would not worship at Siwa, but command its fate. He summoned the priests to prepare the route through the dunes, vowing that by his return, the desert itself would bear witness to Persian dominion. With that decree, he turned his back on the oasis. The palms sighed in the wind, and Siwa fell silent once more, its ancient springs holding fast to the secrets of what would come. Having secured the oracle's begrudging assent, so long as Persia honored the balance of heaven and earth, Cambyses retraced his path through sun-scorched wastes back to Pelusium, where 50,000 waiting soldiers stood arrayed in hardened silence. Camped behind hastily built ramparts, Persia's finest infantry, swift cavalry squadrons, and legions of supply bearers watched their king's return with guarded anticipation. Dust clung to their armor, tongues cracked for water. Yet when Cambyses strode into their midst, the air seemed to sharpen with purpose. Beneath fluttering standards, he addressed his troops. "You have seen the face of Amun's refuge and heard the priest's warning. Now you shall carry Persia's law into the vast expanse beyond these palms. There will be no turning back, no succor when thirst and storm assail you, but glory awaits those who conquer fate itself." With that charge, his generals unfurled worn maps, lines etched by scouts who dared wander beyond known oases. Caravans of skins and grain were lashed to camelback. Engineers fashioned compact field forges to repair weapons lost to sand abrasion. Every man was tested, water rationed, marches timed to dawn, and dusk to evade the desert's peak fury. At first light, a muted drumbeat roused the camp. 50,000 souls formed ranks beneath the rising sun. Cavalry scouts galloped forward to scout the shifting dunes. Elephant teams hauled towering siege towers on reinforced sledges. Supply columns filed out, their burdens overflowing with hope and fear alike. As the mass of steel and sweat spilled over Pelusium's broken causeway and into the unending dunes, Cambyses watched from the city's walls, his silhouette framed by embers of dawn. He whispered a final invocation, "May the balance hold." Then, with unwavering gaze, he turned to plan his next move in Memphis, leaving behind an army that would march into legend, or oblivion. A century after the desert swallowed Cambyses' army, Herodotus wrote of a cataclysmic sandstorm that rose from the horizon like a living beast, howling winds that buried 50,000 souls beneath dunes of shifting gold. He painted a portrait of men frozen at their midday meal, entombed by nature's fury. Yet Herodotus wrote from Athens, never having stood in the sands himself, leaving us to wonder if his tale was history or myth born of empty winds. Centuries later, scientists peeled back the layers of the Sahara's secrets. By drilling deep cores and scouring satellite imagery, they revealed ancient caravan routes and the scars of storms that reshaped the land. Modern geologists confirmed that, under rare but devastating conditions, sandstorms can rage for days, capable of burying bones and steel alike. Could such a tempest really erase an army? Some experts nod in grim agreement. Others insist the desert's hand, though powerful, lacks the finality to erase 50,000 lives entirely. Amid these theories stands Siwa itself, a green jewel in a sea of beige. Palm fronds whisper at the breeze, and marble columns lean against a sky unchanged since antiquity. Yet no relic of Persia's legions has ever been found here. Did Cambyses' war machine reach this sanctuary only to vanish between memory and myth? Or did the sands claim them long before the oasis's promise of water and shade? As each new claim emerges, so do fresh theories. Perhaps local tribes struck from the dunes, ambushing the weary Persians. Maybe a miscalculation led them off course, leaving them to die slowly of thirst. In the end, history and legend entwine like wind-whipped grains. Empires rise upon the backs of armies. They conquer, they crumble, but the earth endures. The fate of Cambyses' men remains suspended between fact and fable, buried beneath layers of time and sand. To this day, expeditions venture into the western desert, clinging to the hope that one day the dunes will yield their secret. Yet the desert does not forget, it only conceals. And perhaps that is its final judgment, that some mysteries are meant to walk forever in silence, echoing across the sands of eternity. Thank you for joining us on this journey through sun, sand, and silence. What do you think happened to this great Persian army? Share your theories about this mysterious disappearance in the comments below, and please give us a like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Until next time, on Silent Whispers of the Past.